Hi, my name is Julie. I'm a financial aid counselor at a private university, and today I'm going to talk about the FAFSA. I'm going to walk you through each question, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about why the FAFSA is even important to you in the first place. I am recording this as of February 17th, 2025, so I do want to acknowledge that there is uncertainty about the existence of the Department of Ed in general. There have been layoffs reported in that department. So I am of the opinion that it will likely be very difficult to contact the Department of Education moving forward. I do not know how financial aid is going to be impacted as we continue under this administration. But I do know that at this point in time, we can still submit your FAFSA. We can still discern whether you are eligible for financial aid. So I'd say just keep pushing forward. Let's do this application. So let's get started. So to begin, you want to make sure you're on the correct website. You want to go to studentaid.gov to begin your FAFSA. What you're going to be doing here is you're going to be filling in an application, providing your income information, your parents' income information if applicable. And this is the way that your schools or your institution that you want to attend after high school is going to be able to access your income information to determine what kind of assistance you'd be eligible for. So we call any assistance financial aid. So it could be free grant or scholarship money, but could be essentially thought of as like a discount on your tuition, or it could be loan funding that you could be eligible for. But what you're doing in the application is you're providing the information, providing your income info, and then when we get to the section where we list all of our schools that you want to send the information to, you're basically giving access to those institutions. And if they admit you, they'll take a look at your application and determine what you're eligible for. They'll compile a financial aid offer and send that to you. Typically, when they send their acceptance letters, if you submitted your FAFSA, they'll also have a full and complete financial aid offer there for you. And then from there, you'll be able to determine whether or not you actually want to attend that institution. So you really honestly don't know how much an institution is going to cost you until you submit your FAFSA and you give them access. If you don't submit your FAFSA, they'll pretty much just say like, hey, this is how much it costs. You can, pay us. Basically, you'll just have to pay us. We're not going to give you any type of assistance. Unless for some reason maybe you applied, you were admitted and won a different scholarship, et cetera, but at least when you submit your FAFSA, you can see what else you're eligible for. So the people, by the way, who can submit a FAFSA are people who are U.S. citizens or are eligible non-citizens. And you can review, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can review the eligible non-citizen section on studentaid.gov to see if you would qualify. If you're not an eligible citizen or you're not a U.S. citizen, this is an application that you won't be able to submit. It'll actually error and you won't be able to access financial aid through it. There are certain state applications that are available to undocumented or documented students. So definitely review your state's application availability if that's you. If you've never submitted a FAFSA before, you have to create an account. So your account is actually going to be linked to your social security number. So you want to make sure your social security number is correct. And you also want to make sure when you're filling in your personal information that your name is spelled exactly how it's listed on your social security card. If there's a discrepancy, you could be asked to verify your identity in the future, and that could prevent you from receiving access to financial aid in the future. So it's really important that when you're at this step that you make sure everything is exact. After creating an account, some people are able to start their application right away, but sometimes it can take a couple of business days for your account to be verified before you can submit a FAFSA. So this is why financial aid counselors like me are super annoying and we tell you to start early because crap like that can happen. So like sometimes you need more time, and if you're trying to submit by the deadline, which At this point in time, it's March 2nd. I don't know if it'll be delayed further, but if you're trying to submit your application by the deadline for maximum financial aid eligibility, you're going to need to start sooner rather than later because certain hiccups like that can happen. In terms of deadline, just because I mentioned it, I'm going to get bigger for this because this is kind of important. So I work in California. So for California, we have a deadline for students if they want to be eligible for like a Cal Grant. And a Cal Grant, if you're eligible, it could be upwards of $10,000. It could be a pretty substantial amount depending on your enrollment and where you're attending. But at least at my university, it can be almost $11,000 worth of grant funding that you could be eligible for. And they really prioritize the deadline. Sometimes students who miss the deadline can still receive access to their Cal Grant, but sometimes it doesn't work that way, and that deadline could really jeopardize someone's eligibility for that grant. So I wouldn't want that to happen to you. So that's why we prioritize the deadline. You can submit your FAFSA really at any time, but the key is we want to make sure you're eligible for the maximum amount. So that's why it's important. Now that you've created your account, you can log in. If you have access right away, you can log in. Which, by the way, if your parent needs to include their income information and they need to create an account, same rules apply. It's got to be attached to your social security number. Name needs to match what it looks like in the social. If your parent does not have the social security number, there'll be an option that they can check where it says, hey, I don't have one. And what they'll do is they'll actually verify that your parent is your parent by asking some questions at the end of the account creation process, where they'll basically be trying to verify your parent based on their credit history. So typically they'll ask like, okay, what's your phone number, or what's your address? And did you use any of these previous addresses? And you want to make sure you answer these correctly. Because if you answer them incorrectly, then you may have to be involved in a more, you'll be involved in a verification process that's kind of takes a little while. Like you would have to submit like an additional, like sometimes they'll say like, okay, well, and we need a picture of your driver's license and we need a picture of blah, blah, blah. Then you'll usually have to mail it to the Department of Ed and someone has to manually review it. It just takes time. It's annoying. It's a hassle. So you really want to make sure when you're filling the account portion that you're doing, like when you're answering the questions, that you're answering them to the best of your ability. I know sometimes students try to create the account for their parent. Don't be like, oh, I think this, or I think, but just call them or like try to sit with them while you're doing this so that you make sure you answer all the questions correctly. Okay. Okay, so you log in and then you want to go to where it says FAFSA form, and then we want to go to complete the FAFSA form. So you'll see a few things at this page. So the 2025-2026 FAFSA is now available, and then you'll see need the 2024-2025 FAFSA form, and you can actually start that one as well. But it's up to you. So if you're a student who's going to be starting in fall of 2025 and you need financial aid through that school year starting then, you're doing the 2025-2026 FAFSA. If you're a student who, let's say you're attending the spring term or the summer term, you'll actually need to complete the 2024-2025 FAFSA form. So, just so you remember it, those years, they correlate with the school year. So if you're starting in 2025, then you do fall 2025 through to summer 2026. You'll use that application for that. So I'm going to say that I am a student, and I'm going to continue through here. The first section you're going to go into is your student identity information. And this is just pretty straightforward. You're just going to type in all of your personal info. And then you're going to put in your state of legal residence. So you'll put your state in there, and then for the date you became a legal resident of California. If you were born in California and you've never moved away, or if this is, a different state, if you're in Washington, whatever this may be, It's going to ask you when you became a legal resident there. If you were born there, don't overthink it. Just put in the date you were born and just continue through there. And then here is in the student marital status, you're going to input you as a student, your status. So if you're someone who's never been married, then you'll put single, or if any of these other items are associated with you, you do that. Next, you'll put in your student, college, or career school plan. So this is just where you tell us, hey, when the school year begins, so in fall of 2025, what am I going to be? So if you're someone who's in high school or you're about to graduate, then you're going to type in here that you're a first-year freshman. Here it's just asking you if you're going to have your bachelor's degree by the time you start school in fall of 2025. If that's not you, then you say no. If you're like a prodigy, I don't know, maybe you've been doing some stuff, maybe you do have your bachelor's degree, then you say yes. But most of y'all are probably going to say no. Okay, in the personal circumstance section, this is actually where the application determines whether you are independent or not. This is one of the main pages which by the way, if you are dependent, that just means that you do have to include your parent income information in your application. If you are independent, then you can omit their information. The Department of Education is super, super specific about who they consider to be independent. And I'm just going to get big for this because I want to make this very, very clear. You are not independent or dependent based on the way your parent files their taxes. So like if they include you as a dependent in their tax returns, that doesn't mean you are independent or dependent in terms of like the way the FAFSA considers it or the Department of Ed considers you. They have their own questions for criteria. So essentially in this section for the student personal circumstances, if any of these apply to you, you're going to be considered an independent student. In this section, you'll be asked if you are at risk of homelessness, or if you are currently homeless. If you answer yes to this question, then yes, you will be considered an independent student as well, even if none of the previous items applied in that other question were reviewed. The student homelessness portion actually needs to be verified by a university. So you can't say yes to this and move forward. It'll actually be flagged at the institution that you're attending, and they'll actually have to do what's called a dependency override with you, where they basically just have a process in place where they confirm whether or not this is true. As of now, you only have to go through that process one time. So if you've been verified at one institution for future applications, if your circumstances are still the same, if you're still at risk of homelessness, you'll just submit the application like normal, and you won't be requested you'll just submit the application, and then you won't actually need to submit anything more, and they'll process your financial aid offer that way. If you do not undergo the verification process or the dependency override with the institution that you're going to attend, and you did indicate that you're at risk of homelessness, you won't actually be able to access your full and complete financial aid offer until that's verified. So at this page, it's told me what my dependency status is. So I'm actually a independent student because of my age, so I'm older than 24. So the application is just going to be considering me an independent student. So I don't actually have to invite any contributors to provide income information to my application. So it'll just be processed based on my signature. If it appears that you are a dependent student, that means you do have to provide contributor information. So there's going to be a portion of the application where it'll have you answer a series of questions, and you just answer them truthfully. In the end, it'll say, okay, we'll just need information from one parent or will name information from two separate parents. Your FAFSA isn't considered officially submitted or complete until all contributors submit and sign their portion, and you also submit and sign your portion. So what's hard is that the application breaks off and you have to wait until they do their portion before it's complete. But the Department of Education does that to ensure that all individuals providing income information consent. Sometimes the email doesn't go through, or sometimes people aren't able to open the invite. So if that's happening to you, here's a few things that can help. Number one, make sure that the address you put in the invite and the name that you put in the invite matches the contributor's FSA ID. So their ID, make sure that all perfectly matches, and it has to be exact. So even capitals, extra spaces, all of that can impact whether an invite gets received by someone. It's very, very sensitive. So confirm for all of those aspects. Sometimes invites can't be open if you're on a specific device or you're in a particular browser. So oftentimes switching browsers, trying a different device can help. Then we have some demographic questions here. These aren't going to be used to determine your financial aid eligibility. So the way you answer these questions won't impact whether or not you'll get a Cal Grant, whether or not you'll get a student loan, because this is just information that the Department of Education collects when you're submitting the application. Same thing here. This is all information that you would fill at your own discretion. It's not going to impact your financial aid eligibility. Then you'll go into the student citizenship status section. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you'll put that in there. If you're an eligible non-citizen, if you have an A registration number, you'll type it in there. If you say that you are neither a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, which you're not necessarily supposed to be filling this application, or maybe you're filling it because a scholarship application requested it and they want to see something processed. So I believe you can, in some cases, just still process an application, but it's not going to be used, your application won't be used to be considered for federal aid. And here's a question on your parents' education status. If you know it, that's fine, you can put it in there. If you don't know it, you can say that you don't know. This also isn't going to be used for financial aid eligibility. In this question, you'll answer yes if your parent or guardian was killed in the line of duty while serving on active duty as a member of the U.S. Armed Forces on or after the events of 9/11, or performing official duties as a public safety officer. So if that applies to you, be sure to select yes in this portion. Students who've experienced a tragedy like that are actually eligible for additional funds. So make sure you answer that correctly. If it doesn't apply to you, then you'll just select no and then hit continue. And here you'll be sure to include your high school information. So this, you can search with the state, city, and the high school name, but once it populates, then you just select it and hit continue. For the federal benefits received section, you want to make sure that you check any of the items if you or your family received any type of federal assistance from any of these funds. If your family size is different from what's indicated in your tax returns, you can answer yes to this question to accurately report below how many additional people you are supporting more than 50%. So for students who are dependent, you can actually type in hey, I know that technically it shows that there's only 3 people in my house, but actually, we're taking care of a grandparent and they're receiving more than 50% of their financial assistance from us. Or maybe you're taking care, it could be anyone. So you can, make sure you clarify the amount of people that are in your household here. And in this section below, where 4, it says enter the number of children or other dependents who live with the student and receive more than half of their support. You can type in any additional. So if there's like an extra 3 people, it'll update your size based on how many people are not included. For the number in college, this is where you'll say how many people in your house are currently attending. So if you're the only person in your household that, or in your family that's actually going to be attending college, then you'll just put 1. But if you have a brother, sister, or maybe one of your parents is going to school, you want to include them here too. One of the really cool aspects of the FAFSA is that it's very helpful in terms of telling you where to locate certain items in your tax returns. So for example, now that we've entered the 2023 tax return information section, you can actually, if you have your tax returns right in front of you, you can determine the answers to these questions by reviewing those little questions, the little bubbles next to each of the questions there. So if you're not sure if you've received the Earned Income Credit, the EIC, you can actually review, if you open it here, you can actually review where that would actually be found. So it's going to be line 27, so you can review that section. And if we scroll down here, these questions also have a bubble if you need additional information. For the amount of college grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits reported, this only refers to scholarships, grants, and other benefits that are actually taxable and that needed to be reported as income. A lot of students, they receive, especially if you're a continuing student, so a lot of times like sophomores and juniors and seniors, people that are continuing, they do this where in this section, they include all of like the Pell Grants or maybe like institutional scholarships that they received that really were only used to cover your tuition, but not necessarily considered taxable amounts. They'll include those there. And what that does is it actually inflates your income and it could disqualify you for certain funds. So only report scholarships, grants, or AmeriCorps benefits that were received and earned as income. It'll also be included in your wages in your tax returns, which are further explained in that bubble next to that box. So I don't want you to fall for that. Most students don't necessarily have any foreign earned income exclusion to report. If you do, it's going to be in your Schedule 1 if you're 1040. If your data is not successfully transferred from the IRS, you'll have to answer specific questions about your tax returns and the individual items that could be presented in it. This is what the questions could look like, and here's a resource from studentaid.gov that tells you where to locate these items if you're having trouble when reviewing your own tax information. Now we have some more questions here asking about your income info. And let me say this, I'm going to be big for this because it's actually kind of important. So if you're like a senior in high school and you're like, what the hell? Like, I don't know what to do with these. If this is like the first time you've submitted a federal form, listen, if you did not earn, if you didn't work in 2023 and you didn't file taxes, a lot of these are going to be zeros. Also, if you have no money, like if you're just like, I don't work and my mom buys me food. Okay, dude, a lot of these are going to be zeros for you. If you're just like, if you're pretty much like, hey dude, like I'm a kid, I'm going to go to college, but like I feel like I'm a kid, like I don't know, it's okay. So you'll just answer all of these questions honestly and to the best of your ability. And if it's a zero, it's a zero, and that's okay. The first question is annual child support received. If you as a student received any child support from a previous spouse or maybe a person that you had a child with, you'll put that there. In the student asset section where it talks about the total amount of cash, savings, and checking accounts, on the date the FAFSA form was first submitted, here's where you're going to put to the best of your knowledge at this point in time how much money you have right now. So if it's $50, it's $50. If it's $1,500, it's $1,500. Whatever you have available that you have access to, that's like liquid money, like money you could just like pull and make a transaction with at this point in time, you'll answer it there. Then you'll be asked about what your net worth is. So your net worth is the value of all of your investments minus any debt that you owe. So that'll be listed there under this question. I'm kind of covering it right now. We don't want to include here the value of a home that you live in currently. So if you have, like, if you own your home, but then you own like other property, maybe you own like a rental property, then you don't necessarily live in it, then yeah, that rental property would have to be included in your net worth. But the house you currently live in, you don't want to include that. Net worth of businesses and investment farms on the date the FAFSA form was first submitted. This is where you put basically the value of a business or of business and investment farms that you may have. If you do not have this, you put 0. If you do have this, you go in and you go ahead and type in that box there. All the financial stuff is done now. So now what you're going to do is include all of the information for the colleges and career schools you are thinking about attending. You're basically giving access to your FAFSA to institutions you're interested in. Doesn't necessarily mean that these institutions have admitted you and they've accepted you. It just means that you're giving them access in case they do admit you. That way they can actually send you a complete financial aid offer. So you can add up to 20 schools and you can kind of search them by state. So let's say I wanted to include a school like UCI. So we'll put in the state, California. They're in Irvine. And then we can search through here. And let's see, here they are, University of California, Irvine. You can select those. You don't necessarily have to include the school code here. I mean, if you have the school code, that's fine, but you can search through and select the ones that you want to add. This is the final page you'll see before you're done with your portion of your FAFSA. You can actually open each of these up and review them. And when you're done, you check this box and you select sign and submit down here. Here's the submission page. I didn't actually get an SAI calculated because while I was creating this application, I just wanted to see what would happen if you indicated you were neither a citizen nor an eligible non-citizen. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, if you have contributors, they need to sign and submit their portion before your application is considered officially submitted. You can view the status of your contributors, edit contributor information, resend invites all through your dashboard. And that can be found if you click on your name and then hit dashboard through the studentaid.gov site. The contributor portion of the application is very, very similar to what you'll see on the student side and what I walk through. So everything that I've said can be applied to the parent, except you're going to be answering that as a parent. And the parent truly should be just answering the questions on their portion. I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to try and upload videos in the future about other aspects regarding the financial aid process. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below.